In 1947, Bob Hope and Bing Crosby appeared to be Hollywood's ideal couple. However, there is a cruel truth concealed beneath their renowned road films. Crosby referred to him as a talentless hack, declined to attend his roasts, and prohibited their spouses from socializing. The true narrative of how two comedy legends transitioned from partners to enemies, and the startling betrayal that ultimately separated them, is now emerging decades later. Leslie Towns Hope was born as Bob Hope on May 29, 1903, in the London suburb of Eltham. William, his father, was a stonemason from Somerset. Avis, his mother, was a Welsh light opera vocalist. Life in England was difficult, and money was scarce. William elected to gamble on a more promising future. He departed for the United States in 1907 and relocated to Cleveland, Ohio, where his siblings were already employed as plumbers and steamfitters. He also had 6 sons. The family arrived at Ellis Island on March 30, 1908, after traveling in third class aboard the SS Philadelphia. Immigration officers inadvertently documented Bob's age as 2 years old, rather than 4, when they recorded his information. For years, that error was recorded in his official documents. Cleveland was a challenging place to live. The Hope family endured financial hardships while residing in a modest residence in the vicinity of Doan's Corners. Her children were consistently encouraged by them, as they frequently welcomed immigrants. She assisted Bob in honing his natural talent for entertainment and taught him to croon. He enjoyed performing small dance routines, telling stories, and mimicking others. Despite the scarcity of funds, his mother ensured that he had the opportunity to develop his abilities. Bob experienced his first genuine performance at the age of 10. In Cleveland, he participated in a Charlie Chaplin-like contest at Luna Park and emerged victorious. He relished the thrill of performing on stage. However, his primary objective at that time was not entertainment. Instead, he developed an interest in boxing. In 1919, he competed in the Ohio Novice Boxing Championships under the name Packy East, which was a tribute to boxer Packy McFarland. Before losing in the finals, he succeeded in winning 3 bouts. He once jokingly claimed that he spent more time on the canvas than Picasso later in life. Bob pursued any employment opportunity that presented itself in order to provide for his family. He attempted to hustle pool, peddled newspapers, worked as a soda jerk, and sold shoes. He interacted with a diverse array of individuals as a result of these positions. He observed their speech, body language, and humor. He was unknowingly compiling the material that would subsequently influence his comedy. In the 1920s, he began to recognize the importance of entertainment. He obtained modest employment opportunities in vaudeville by enrolling in dance instruction from professionals such as Johnny Root and King Rastus Brown. Mildred Rosequist was his initial performing companion, however, her mother forbade her from traveling. Subsequently, he collaborated with Lloyd Durbin and George Byron. Initially, he performed in intimate venues such as Cleveland's Bandbox Theater. He persisted in his efforts to improve and gain a higher position. He had arrived at the Palace Theater in New York City by 1931, which was one of the largest vaudeville stages in the country. Bob's training ground was vaudeville. He adopted a more organic approach than the majority of comedians of his era, who adhered to predetermined routines. However, he preferred to engage with the audience rather than merely reciting rehearsed quips. His performances were distinguished from those of other entertainers by the combination of fast one-liners and dancing. He transitioned from vaudeville to radio in the late 1930s. His initial radio appearances consisted of anchoring the Intimate Review in 1935 and the Atlantic Family from 1935 to 1936. Although these early performances served as an opportunity for him to garner attention, it was the Pepsodent Show, which featured Bob Hope, that established him as a national celebrity. The Pepsodent Show was an immediate success upon its debut on NBC. It was the most popular program in the United States during the early 1940s. In spite of the passage of time, for more than a decade, millions of viewers tuned in each week, anticipating the next statement from Hope. His approach was distinct from that of other comedians of the era. Hope became the punchline, while the majority of radio personalities portrayed fictional characters. He maintained the freshness of his material by making light of actual events and everyday life. He instructed his writers to peruse the newspaper and transform the headlines into jokes. Every week, they composed numerous quips, and Hope selected only the most exceptional ones. This rapid-fire methodology established the foundation for the late-night talk show monologues that would emerge decades later. His accomplishments were not overlooked. He was the recipient of 3 Peabody Awards, which are among the most prestigious accolades in the field of broadcasting. The initial recognition was in 1944, and it acknowledged his efforts to elevate morale during the conflict. The Peabody Committee commended his commitment, stating that the soldiers' happiness was immeasurable. Following this, he was awarded additional Peabody Awards for his contributions to both radio and television. The Pepsodent program was not only the most popular radio program at its height, but it was also an integral part of American culture. It occupied the highest position from 1942 to 1944, demonstrating that comedy could serve a purpose beyond mere entertainment. It has the potential to unite individuals. It has the potential to elevate one's mood during challenging circumstances. Hope's influence persisted even after radio's discontinuation. In 1990, he was inducted into the Radio Hall of Fame, a concluding honor for a man who had dedicated decades to influencing the comedy industry. Bob Hope's initial foray into Hollywood was anything but dazzling. Going Spanish, a short film that he subsequently joked was so bad that it should be used as punishment, was his first film role in 1934. This type of humor became his signature. Self-aware, sharp, and consistently punctual. Audiences adored him for his lack of self-importance. The major broadcast of 1938 was his breakthrough. It was not merely another musical comedy. It expressed gratitude to the world for the memory. Shirley Ross and Hope performed the song, which immediately became a success. The melody became an integral component of his identity, and the lyrics were both humorous and sentimental. It encapsulated all the qualities that individuals cherished about him: humor, charm, and a hint of sincerity. Hope was already a prominent figure on radio by the late 1930s. However, Hollywood presented a distinct obstacle. It was his natural comedic manner that was utilized in his film roles. He was consistently the person who was overconfident and spoke quickly, which led to him getting into trouble. A prime example is The Cat and the Canary, which was released in 1939. The film was a blend of comedy and horror, with Hope portraying a nervous savior. Audiences were captivated by his ability to strike a balance between humor and suspense. Subsequently, The Road to Singapore was established in 1940. This marked the beginning of a legendary event. It was the inaugural installment of the Road to Film series, which featured Hope in collaboration with Bing Crosby and Dorothy Lamour. These films encompassed every aspect: non-stop comedy, music, and adventure. Crosby and Hope possessed an extraordinary rapport. The suave talker was Crosby. The wisecracking coward was Hope. Lamour was the woman they both pursued. The exceptional quality of these films was their authenticity. The script lacked a significant amount of humor. Hope and Crosby were in a perpetual state of improvisation, frequently engaging in playful banter and even breaching the fourth wall. Their rapid-fire banter imbued the films with a vitality that resonated with the audience. Road to Morocco, 1942, was one of the most popular entries in the series, which spanned more than 2 decades. The formula was straightforward, yet it never became stale. Hope and Crosby were not merely acting, they were also having a good time, which was evident. Hope's ability to independently advance a film was demonstrated even beyond The Road to. He possessed a talent for pastiche, transforming traditional genres into hysterical comedies. The Pale Face, 1948, served as an ideal illustration. He portrayed a dentist who was cowardly and inadvertently transformed into a Western hero. The notion of Hope as a gunslinger was absurd, however, this was precisely what rendered it amusing. He did not portray himself as a tough person. He portrayed the individual who was in over his head but managed to persevere. His affection for parody persisted with My Favorite Brunette. A comedy that ridiculed detective films was released in 1947. Hope's attempt to endure a night in a haunted estate in The Ghostbreakers, 1940, was a blend of horror and comedy. He was not a conventional action hero. He failed to fight his way out of difficulty. He successfully navigated his exit through conversation. This distinguished him from other well-known individuals of the era. The commencement of a historic event was Bob Hope's initial USO tour on May 6, 1941. He conducted his NBC radio program live in front of a servicemen audience at March Field in California that evening. It was a significant occasion for the USO, which had been established just months prior, and a novel experience for him. The venue was filled with soldiers who were anxious to witness a Hollywood celebrity perform exclusively for them. Hope provided them with a combination of music and comedy, but more importantly, he provided them with an opportunity to chuckle. His humor was tailored to their specific needs, as it was both concise and razor-sharp. He discussed the peculiar world of military bases, their daily existence, and their struggles. The theater performance was not refined. It had an intimate quality. Responded with a cacophony of hilarity. Hope was aware at that instant that he had identified his most significant audience. Everything was altered by that program. Hope performed at bases and centers throughout the United States for the next year and a half. Then, World War II occurred, and he relocated his performance to another country. He traveled to some of the most perilous locations on Earth from 1941 to 1945. He frequently performed in the vicinity of active combat zones in Europe and the Pacific. In a period of 2 months, he traveled 30,000 miles. He performed over 150 performances during his visits to Hawaii, New Guinea, and Australia. Infrastructure was scarce in certain locations. The equipment was unreliable, and the stages were improvised. He was indifferent. The soldiers were of paramount importance. Hope's travels were perilous. His movements were monitored by German forces, who were aware of the significant impact he had on American morale. Subsequently, bombings were conducted in the towns where he had recently performed. He was never deterred by the peril. His actions were unwavering. He would make light of the situation if a weapon were to fall in the vicinity. When the circumstances were challenging, he jested with himself for being present. Soldiers cherished him for this reason. It was not solely about hilarity that characterized his performances. They served as a reminder of their homeland to the soldiers. He incorporated musicians, dancers, and vocalists to enhance the theatrical experience. Each performance was distinctive. He customized his quips to suit the environment, the individuals, and the circumstances. He was not merely amusing the soldiers. He was establishing a connection with them. Over time, Hope evolved into more than just a comedian. He became a symbol to them, as they perceived him as one of them, someone who resonated with their experiences. His Christmas travels were particularly significant. He performed in frigid temperatures, occasionally just miles from battle zones, during the Korean War. In Vietnam, where public opinion regarding the conflict was divided, he encountered criticism upon his return home. However, he continued to display his support for the troops. Some of his most significant missions were in Vietnam. He invited Hollywood celebrities such as Margaret and Raquel Welch to perform with him. To prevent attacks by strategically positioning stages in various locations to confound adversaries. These performances were unforgettable for the soldiers. A significant number of individuals had never witnessed a live performance, let alone one featuring celebrities from their own country. Hope's commitment was unwavering. During Operation Desert Shield in 1990, he traveled to Saudi Arabia at the age of 87. He had been entertaining troops for nearly 5 decades, participating in 57 USO tours that spanned numerous continents and wars. He was designated an honorary veteran by Congress. It was the sole title that he held in higher regard than any memento or award. Bob Hope entered the television industry in 1947 by hosting the inaugural commercial broadcast on KTLA in Los Angeles. However, his genuine breakthrough occurred on April 9, 1950, with the broadcast of NBC's Star-Spangled Review. His sharp monologues, comedy sketches, and musical performances were broadcast on television during this variety program. It was a seamless transition from radio, and it helped establish a devoted audience. The program was broadcast live from New York, and it served as the commencement of his extensive collaboration with NBC. Hope opted to concentrate on television specials rather than committing to a weekly series. This decision allowed him to continue his work in films and USO excursions while maintaining high-quality productions. His initial success on television distinguished him. He secured a long-term contract with NBC in 1950, which guaranteed his continued presence on the air for decades. The transition to television was a challenge for radio. However, Hope's cadence and delivery were equally effective on screen as they were on the air. He was one of the most recognizable figures in the entertainment industry by the early 1950s. His Christmas specials established an enduring custom. In 1954, he began filming these performances for television, despite the fact that he had begun performing for U.S. forces during World War II. He traveled the world to entertain Raquel Welch and Neil Armstrong in these specials. They were not merely broadcasts during the holiday season. They were moments of connection for soldiers who were stationed in remote locations. In January 1970, one of the most memorable episodes was broadcast. This was his Vietnam Christmas performance, which attracted the highest television audience share of any entertainment special at the time, at 64%. The Pope's visits were more than just entertainment for soldiers who were in the midst of a controversial conflict. They served as a reminder of home. Operation Desert Shield in 1990 resulted in the continuation of his Christmas specials on an overseas USO tour. His legacy was established by these performances, which eclipsed his status as a comedian. He was an individual who used his talent to elevate the morale of those who were serving their country. Hope's television specials adhered to a format that would subsequently influence late-night talk programs and variety shows. His opening monologues were characterized by a keen, incisive humor that addressed contemporary events. In each special, he included celebrity visitors, music, and comedy skits. His manner of humor rendered him genuinely comprehensible, even when he was performing alongside Hollywood's most prominent figures. Additionally, from 1963 to 1967, he served as the host of Bob Hope Presents the Chrysler Theater, an anthology series that included variety-style episodes and dramatic performances. This demonstrated his versatility as both a producer and performer. He left behind a legacy that influenced American entertainment by hosting over 300 television specials between 1950 and 1996. Brimming with contradictions. His initial marriage to Grace Louise Troxell remains shrouded in mystery. They were married on January 25, 1933, in Erie, Pennsylvania, while they were performing in vaudeville. The marriage was terminated in November 1934. The peculiarity of this situation is that Hope later refuted that it occurred. Publicists even asserted that the marriage license was an error, despite the fact that court records demonstrated otherwise. Hope continued to send Troxell money for the remainder of her life, despite her denial. In 1976, at the age of 65, she was still being financially supported by the man who maintained that she was never his wife. The timing of this narrative is even stranger when you consider that in mid-1933, while still legally married to Troxell, Hope began an affair with Dolores Reed. She was a Ziegfeld performer who had recently joined his vaudeville troupe, as she subsequently claimed. While he married Reed in February 1934, it was several months before his divorce from Troxell was finalized. This poses a significant inquiry. Is it possible that Hope was a bigamist, or did he fabricate information regarding his second marriage? Hope and Reed have never been able to locate their marriage certificate or wedding photographs. Biographers such as Richard Zoglin have questioned whether their marriage was ever legally recognized. Reed did not appear to be concerned if it was not. She once stated that she would not have remained if their marriage had not been successful. Hope and Reed maintained their relationship for nearly 7 decades, concluding with Reed's passing in 2003. Linda, Anthony, Kelly, and Eleonora are 4 children who were from an orphanage in Evanston, Illinois. Also, they assumed the role of legal guardians for Tracy Shore, the daughter of Bernard Tutts Shore, a renowned New York bar proprietor. The family maintained a close public image, despite Hope's lengthy absences and well-known affairs. Reed concentrated on the upbringing of the children, while Hope established himself as one of the most renowned entertainers in the United States. Hope portrayed himself as a devoted spouse and a devout Catholic. Hope engaged in numerous affairs with juvenile actresses and showgirls. A number of them were transient. Meanwhile, others endured for an extended period. These narratives were concealed by his charisma and influence. However, he was nearly exposed in a manner that he was unable to control during a single affair. Hope encountered Barbara Payton, a Hollywood rising personality, in 1949. She was ambitious, attractive, and young. Despite the fact that Hope was married, he continued to pursue her. He provided her with extravagant gifts and arranged for her to reside in a luxurious flat. They maintained a clandestine relationship for 6 months. Desired additional information. She advocated for increased financial backing and a more profound dedication. Hope, who was renowned for her financial prudence, declined. He terminated the relationship in August. He provided her with a compensation and departed in order to maintain her silence. Their affair was kept confidential for an extended period of time. Hope persisted in his behavior, progressing to other women. His image was meticulously managed by his staff. Any rumors were promptly dispelled. However, Peyton abruptly broke his silence in 1956. Her professional trajectory had fallen apart. She was experiencing financial difficulties and personal difficulties. She was so desperate that she sold her narrative to Confidential. No one else had ever exposed Hope in the manner she did during the interview. She characterized him as ruthless, controlling, and frigid. She disclosed information regarding their affair that undermined his reputation for purity. Silence was Hope's response. He was aware that his involvement in the scandal would only serve to exacerbate its severity. The damage was mitigated by his public relations team. Hope's career remained unaffected, and the narrative dimmed. Peyton was not as fortunate. The repercussions of speaking out against a prominent individual in Hollywood were significant. Her professional trajectory never recovered. She plunged further into destitution and addiction. She had become a forgotten name by the time of her death in 1967. Conversely, Hope maintained his dual existence. It was an open secret in Hollywood that his long-term adultery with actress Marilyn Maxwell was ongoing. However, the public was never informed. Another partnership with Miss World Victor Rosemary Franklin endured for nearly 3 decades. According to insiders, young women were observed standing outside his hotel rooms during tours. Some were aspirant actresses, while others were models and beauty goddesses. Although Bob Hope relished the attention, he never allowed these matters to disrupt his professional life. Reed was aware of his infidelity. However, she condoned it. She acknowledged in a 1978 interview that she was uncertain as to whether her spouse was ever entirely genuine. Nevertheless, she elected to remain. It is possible that her Catholic faith was the cause. It is possible that it was a practical decision. She maintained her presence by his side, regardless of the cause. No one else ever succeeded her, despite the numerous indiscretions. Bob Hope and Bing Crosby were simply not intended to be a team. Commenced the casting of Road to Singapore. 5 additional duos declined to review the script. Fred McMurray and Jack Oakey declined the offer. George Burns and Gracie Allen also participated. The studio was at a loss for alternatives. Hope was a budding comedian who had recently appeared in the film The Cat and the Canary. However, he was not yet a movie sensation. Crosby was. Paramount elected to take a risk and couple them. Hope and Crosby had previously encountered each other during live performances and on the radio. However, their relationship was not particularly close. The female protagonist was Dorothy Lamour. Hope was advertised as the third act, as Crosby was the most prominent figure. The two actors rapidly established a cadence as soon as filming commenced in October 1939. They commenced improvising, interjecting humor and breaching the fourth wall. The original script did not include nearly half of the film's dialogue. Victor Schertzinger, the director, was irritated. However, the audience adored it. The film achieved considerable success. Hope and Crosby had discovered a successful idea, and Paramount recognized the potential for additional projects. They subsequently collaborated on the production of 6 additional road films. In private, the relationship was not as it appeared on screen. Crosby did not hold optimism in high regard. He referred to him as a talented hack on numerous occasions. He was not teasing. Crosby was reclusive and preferred to be alone. Hope was the contrary. He thrived in social environments and preferred to be in the company of others on set, while Crosby maintained his privacy. Sitting alone while Hope mingled with the crew or reading race results, they did not make time for each other outside of work. Their differences were evident in other ways, as well, as their spouses did not engage in social activities. When Hope was feted at a Friars Club roast, Crosby declined to attend. People took note of him because he was a board member of the club. He dismissed the question when asked the reason for his decision to forego it. "I was not ravenous. Money was an additional concern." At the outset, Crosby was the more prominent figure, which resulted in him earning nearly twice as much as Hope on the initial road films. "I trust that was not to your liking." In 1947, he renegotiated his contract and began earning the same as Crosby. However, the rivalry between them was never truly resolved. Bob Hope and Bing Crosby's rivalry was not solely for the cameras, it was an integral component of their act, a perpetual back and forth that further enhanced the humor of their films. In 1952's Road to Bali, Hope addressed the audience and announced, "He's going to sing, folks. It is now appropriate to visit a popcorn stand." They maintained the performance during public appearances and interviews. Hope once stated, "There is nothing I would not do for Bing, and there is nothing he would not do for me. This is the way we live our lives, doing nothing for each other." Their humor obscured any genuine tension, creating the illusion of an inseparable pair. In reality, they were never in close proximity, however, the public perceived them as two distinct aspects of the same currency, perpetually engaging in competition and providing entertainment. At the age of 94, Bob Hope joined his old companion, Jimmy Stewart, at his funeral. Individuals observed his feeble appearance. He returned to the stage for the 50th anniversary of the Primetime Emmy Awards 1 year later. Milton Berle and Sid Caesar joined him. Gloria Stewart and Fay Wray, both Hollywood luminaries, were also in attendance, by which he achieved fame. He attended the inauguration of the Bob Hope Gallery of American Entertainment at the Library of Congress in 1999. Two significant exhibitions regarding his life and career were presented by the institution in his honor. He made one of his final public appearances at the Hope Classic Golf Tournament the following year, at the age of 97. He embraced Swedish golfer Jesper Parnevik at that location. His health was deteriorating by that time. He was hospitalized for pneumonia 1 year later. Ever due, despite his age. He observed his 100th birthday on May 29, 2003. The intersection of Hollywood and Vine was renamed Bob Hope Square by the city of Los Angeles. Bob Hope Day was declared in 35 states. Nevertheless, his wit persisted. He jokingly stated, "I am so old that my blood type has been cancelled." Hope had consistently maintained his faith in secrecy. However, he converted to Catholicism 7 years prior to his death. Additionally, he encountered an unusual encounter with his own mortality. An obituary was published in 1998, 5 years prior to his passing. The Associated Press's sanctuary was broadcast in error. His death was even proclaimed by the U.S. House of Representatives before it was discovered that he was still alive. He was in relatively excellent health for the majority of his old age, despite the fact that he became frail in his final years. Bob Hope passed away at his residence in Toluca Lake, California, on the morning of July 27, 2003. He had passed his centenary birthday by 2 months. Later, his grandson disclosed that Hope's wife, Dolores, inquired as to his burial location on his deathbed. He responded with a simple, "Surprise me." His remains were interred in a mausoleum crypt at San Fernando Mission Cemetery. Subsequently, they were relocated to the Bob Hope Memorial Garden, which was constructed adjacent to the cemetery. Dolores lived an additional 8 years before passing away at the age of 102. Cartoonists worldwide paid tribute to him subsequent to his passing. Numerous individuals depicted his longtime companion Bing Crosby, who had passed away in 1977, as welcoming him to heaven. It was an ideal conclusion to have the audience laughing.